Okay, kids, we are back, and with us we have a guest from Finland. Her name is Noora Ronkainen. Hi, Noora, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, it's really wonderful to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah.
We're really honored to have you. And so, kids, I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to ask Noora to tell you a little bit about herself. And when she does, you'll see why we asked her to be joining us today. Noora, can you introduce yourself to the kids and tell them a little bit about your life?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm happy to share a bit. And I also had I was smiling when I was thinking back at, how I was as a child and so forth. So if we start from today, so yeah, Nora, I'm a researcher. So what I'm trying to do in my work, I'm trying to understand, trying to figure out why people are taking part in sport and exercise and physical activity, what makes that worthwhile for them, and what we can learn about ourselves and the world more broadly when we are playing sport. What does it teach us about life? So those kind of things are something that I'm trying to understand, and I'm of course when I'm doing different activities myself, I'm wondering about why am I doing all this and what's the value of this. So yeah, that's the work context. And I have worked in different universities as a researcher. So I'm now back in Finland after a few years abroad. So I was in Denmark, in the UK, and in China. And so that was maybe 8 years in total being abroad before coming back to Finland now. And so that has been a wonderful part of working at the university, that I have been uh, also able to explore the world and meet a lot of new people. That has been really the wonderful part, and learning about new cultures as well. And since we talk about physical activity and sports, maybe worth mentioning that the two sports that I'm doing the most are running and martial arts. So Thai boxing more specifically. So those are the two things that I'm most fascinated about, and I've been training for quite many years. And but I also love all kinds of adventure sports, mountain biking, hiking in the forests. I've taken part in some adventure sport event. All these things that allow you to go out there and experience the nature.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, just as an aside, we have a performance coming up in about 3 months, and martial arts are going to be a part of that performance. And one of our PE team is using this year. We have to keep we have restrictions on what we can do with the kids. We have to keep them
Yeah,
separate, and then we have to keep cohorts separate from other cohorts. But one thing that is able we're able to do, or that my colleague is able to do, is martial arts, and he's
yeah,
really gotten into it all year long. The kids have been doing it. Kids that have never even dabbled in it before. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw that boxing was part of one of your past performances, and I was delighted to see that as well. And I think martial arts is it's such a wonderful activities, because I started 6 years ago when I was 30 years old, and so that's quite old for somebody to start a new type of activity if we think of many of the other sports or physical activities. But in martial arts, often a lot of people also start later, so you are never too old to start martial arts, and you can always learn new things and develop yourself and really enjoy that at whatever age, if you're 9 years old or if you're 75. So it's something that everybody can do and find a lot of value from that.
that's beautiful. So tell the kids about you when you were their age, 9, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, this is especially the part that made me smile when I was thinking back. And I think when we are talking about like physical activities and sports, it's important to mention that we are two children in my family, and my older brother is 2.5 years older than I am. And our father was quite into different sports and activities. So I think we were doing a lot of things that are not necessarily like the typical girls' activities, or they were kind of taking me to different things. So we had like our own ski jumping hill during the winter that my father just like built that in the forest behind our cottage. And I think you could jump something like 15 meters from that or something like that. So it was a bit crazy, and you would like sometimes fall over and all these things. But a good thing is like when you're doing these crazy things when you're young, like nothing happens. I think if I now did it, I would probably break all my bones and and so forth. And we were doing like a lot of in the winter, like downhill skiing with my brother as well, and he would always take me to the most scary places, but I just had to follow and keep up to that. So yeah, a lot of good memories. And for the summer, like my father built like a long jump. We could be doing like athletics in our backyard, so you could be doing like high jump and long jump and these different things. So I wasn't a lot like involved in organized sports, but like we had our own sports field in the backyard. So that was kind of what kept me active. But I have to say that as a child, it's not only about like running around the whole day, because I also like to be reading books. I was reading a lot for being like at 9, 10 years old. I think I've always been a little introverted, so it means that I also enjoy like, you know, spending time by myself and thinking about things and you know, maybe listening to music. And so like these activities, physical activities, they were like important part, but just one part. So certainly I have been interested in many things when I was younger.
That's great. Do you remember physical education in school at that age?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, you know, when you had to be doing all these tests about, you know, how fast you run 60 meters, or like a lot of focus on measurement. And it's these kind of things that a lot of people remember from physical education, and not only in positive terms. So I think we had quite a lot of, you would do different sports disciplines, and we soon learned that who is good in that and who is not so good at that. And something like gymnastics was something that I was never good at. And so i I think that's like certainly how things have evolved. And now, for example, at your school you are doing things in a very different way, and it's not taken for granted. So I wouldn't say that physical education was necessarily my favorite subject. So I was doing quite well in some things, I think in the athletics, because we had been doing it in our backyard, and I was like fairly good at cross country skiing and distance running and those things. But I never, so I was in some school competitions and some of that, but I don't think I was ever like, when I was younger, I was not very much enjoying the competition element of that. So like skiing and running, I probably more enjoyed it when you didn't have to be running against anyone else. You get to just run with your own pace. And I think orienteering was something that I enjoyed. That, you know, you get a little bit lost in the forest and you try to find your way out, and that kind of things. So the explorative activities, that's something I remember that was like a nice part of physical education class.
Orienteering is something that we do not do here. Could you
Okay.
explain just a little bit more to the kids what orienteering is?
Yeah, so orienteering is an activity where you are running in the forest and you have a map. And on the map, you have like different points that you need to find. And when you reach the point, there is something in that place in the forest. So, for example, we could have some letter that was hidden behind rock or a tree, and then you find these 5, 6 different places in the forest, and then you have to combine the letters, and then at the end you have some word, and you have to go and tell the teacher, and then that kind of shows if you've been in all places or not. And so that's also like, we had that kind of thing. And orienteering is also like a competitive sport for adults, but like the way we were doing it, it was just, we are learning to read the map, and we are choosing what way we want to go in the forest. Typically we would do it like in pairs, or with 3 people. Yeah, so that's a really fun activity. Yeah.
And we have a forest right next to our school. We may have to look into doing that. I know my colleague Ryan Anderson would love to do that.
Yeah, you can also do it in the city, by the way.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can hide things like between buildings or anywhere, Maybe that's something to explore. Yeah.
Well, it's good. It fits into our mission of building kids individually, but that's a whole different conversation. But I wanted to ask you, speaking of our mission, you've had a chance to review video of our kids performing at PE class and in our year-end PE performance. Do you have any feedback for them?
Yeah. So I think the first part I want to say is that we already talked a little bit about my own physical education experiences that I has had as a child. And I think they are really so different. So I really love the idea how you are building this sense of community. And so that we know that we have different skills. So I might be better at boxing, but I might not be, some team sport might not be like my strength, or some other gymnastics is something that I mentioned that is not necessarily my strength. So what I love in your program is that people with different types of skills, you can perform those skills, you can develop those skills, and then you can also show those skills. So we all enjoy when we have learned something new and we can show others that we can do this well. So I think it's really a lovely idea, and especially that there is no measurement, or it's not a competition. And I mean, if some of us want to be oriented towards more competitive sport, there are different occasions, different contexts where we can pursue that. But I think in physical education, most of us will find a lot more value if we can do things together, develop our skills from where we are, express those skills, instead of all the time comparing to others. So that's one thing. Another thing is the music. I really love that. So can't remember ever having any music component built into PE lessons. So I think that's such a really good way of expanding the ways we can practice movement, how we can explore and also get carried away. There are these wonderful moments in movement when you forget about yourself, and you forget about where you are, and you forget about time, and doing things with that music and being carried away by the music is really a lovely experience also.
We feel those moments regularly at PE class, and there's an ethic built into the group, which is one of respecting, the fact that some people aren't as good as others, but that's okay. And some people are amazing at certain things.
Yeah.
That's great. And we want to give them a chance to do that. And it's all, it's hard to explain, but it's a process. And we've been doing it for a while, but I think it comes up well. I think it comes out well in those videos, because that's the end product of a lot of preparation and a lot of kids, coming to the position in their own minds of what the right thing to do is, and what the way to behave is.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
absolutely. And maybe something to add to that. So I mentioned earlier that I also like enjoy spending time by myself, and you know, I enjoy practicing things also alone. So I think when you have this, that different children can be doing different things and they can be focusing on their own skill, I think it's really nice to have this combination of, yes, we are doing things together, but yes, you are also allowed to explore by yourself your own skills and, you know, do your own thing, uh, and, you know, spend time on that skill without like too much hassle from outside. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Now, before I move on to ask you the next question, you had mentioned the different places that you've been, China, Denmark. I think you mentioned those two, and I don't remember if there was
Yeah.
another one.
And the UK. Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Did you have occasion to observe schools in those places and get a feel for what they might be doing in those places?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was not involved in doing research at school, so I had some colleagues who were. Um, yeah, I guess it might be interesting to say that at the university where I worked in China, in Shanghai, uh, there was also like physical education classes for the undergraduate students. So, you know, a lot of universities don't have a physical education component. And so, but yeah, as far as I could see, we were working at the same place, so at the athletic stadium, so we would often see the classes, and quite often there was, in my view, unfortunately, this emphasis on, you know, measuring your skills, and, you know, you had to reach certain times and or certain fitness level and those things. So there was even a fitness test that you have to pass at the university.
Wow.
So that was quite incredible. But obviously, coming from outside, and I don't know the specifics of all that, and it's a cultural difference and all those things. So I wouldn't want to be saying too much about that.
Sure.
But so just for us to be thinking, we know that a lot of people, both children and adults, are not uh, physically enough, active enough from the health point of view. But certainly, we can find more inspiration to, you know, do physical activities and find meaning from them if not everything is just measured and you just need to reach a certain standard and that's it. So I, based on my research and you know, a lot of other research and all that, we know that this kind of very extrinsic type of motivation typically doesn't get us very far if we think of being physically active also later in life. Yeah.
We agree with that way of thinking. I wanted to ask you a couple of more questions, and another one that just went out of my head, but maybe it'll come back. But so, with regard to the children that you're speaking with, and by the way, thank you so much for these wonderful thoughts. This is very similar to how we think here at Cypress Woods at our school.
Yeah.
And there's a growing, I think, body of individuals and institutions who are moving in this direction that you're moving in. There's meaningful, you know, getting meaning from their movement and from their involvement in physical activity and so forth. At least that's what
Mm.
I, I,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually true or not because I'm not out there. But anyway, just a couple more questions. I know that you're in a position to interview children or kids, younger adults for positions in teams that you might be forming or groups that you might be putting together. What are the things that you look for in somebody that you might want to work with? What traits do you look for?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we are talking about these things, then I'm working in the university context, so we would be talking about maybe master students or research assistants or doctoral students and so forth. But I think it also applies more generally to working life, that we are constantly required to learn a lot of new things and a lot of new skills, and we are often taken out from our comfort zone. So how things are, for example, in social media, and how you build connections and share your research or whatever it is you are doing in your work. It's quite different from what it has been in the past. And I think a lot of time in our work, we have to be like jumping outside of our comfort zone and what we have done in the past. I mean, we are now having this conversation and we are on the, how much is it, 7-hour time difference, and we are on the other sides of the world, and we have to figure out what is a time that works for both of us. And a lot of things that we have to figure out as we do things. And I think what is so important is that we have to a little bit sometimes take risks and also not be afraid of failing. So that's the same thing when we are, learning some new skills in sports. Like, in order to learn something, you have to try. And if you try, there's always possibility that it doesn't go right in the, first attempt. So I think that's really so important, that we have to be taking initiatives and, being quite, especially here in the university context, but also in other contexts, that we have to be taking these initiatives and being quite independent and really being proactive. So we cannot wait for others to be like, you need to do A, B, and C. So I really appreciate when looking at, for example, students that, they will, share their ideas. They, even things that I haven't been asking for, that, this might be a great thing that should be done in this project. Mm-hmm. Or, I know about this kind of platform, and there we can create some nice videos of the research and we can share it in A, B, and C, and more people will see it. So, having these initiatives and new ideas and really finding out about things yourself. So those are probably some of the things that we really need in our teams.
Wonderful. Those are great things to aim toward. The last question I want to ask you is, maybe thinking, of course, back to your 9 and 10 and 11-year-old self and the children that we're speaking with, what advice would you give them? And especially any of them that might want to move down a path of teaching, coaching, research, things of that nature. But in general, what advice would you give to 9, 10, and 11-year-old children?
Yeah, I think maybe a new thing that I haven't talked about so far is that, as a child, I mentioned that we were doing different activities, and, my parents would also take me like skiing, cross-country skiing, and that kind of things. And when you are 10 years old, like, you don't really always want to go, So sometimes your parents are asking you to do things that you don't really want to do. And so at that point, it's like, no, I just want to be, at home and watching cartoons or whatever, And so you don't see it when you're at that age. But sometimes, doing things that are not fun are actually something that are valuable for you. It's the same thing with, why do you have to study math or biology or all these things? Why do I need to read these books, and why do we have these exams? Like, sometimes we don't know what is good for us in the long term, and then we just have to be doing things, that are not enjoyable right away, but like in the bigger picture they make sense. And I think for that I need to be sharing. So there was a story when in China, so we were visiting this temple where the Confucius had been, I think, teaching at the time when he lived. And there was still a tradition that, at school, the children would be learning some verses and some, sayings and proverbs and that kind of things that they might not understand at the time. And so it's like, why do you ask children to be memorizing things that, don't really make a lot of sense for them or doesn't connect with them a lot. But so what the person who we talked to was just saying that, you memorize it when you're young, and when you're older, you understand what it means. So at some point in your life, these things that didn't make sense when you were young will actually start making sense. So maybe that's also like for all of us that, not always just do the things that are fun and enjoyable, but sometimes it's good to do things that are not so fun and enjoyable. And at some later stage of life, we might find the value of those things too.
Brilliant. That is brilliant. Do you have anything else that you would like to say about your meaningful sport mission and all of the things that you're doing, your podcast, your research, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just by that we are now having this conversation is that part of that mission has been realized that, we are discussing today, we are thinking of the value of physical activity, exercise and sport. And kind of the main message, one of the key messages of my work and that meaningful sport project is that I truly believe that our physical activities, our sporting activities they can bring so much more than health benefits. Or talking to athletes, when they think about things in retrospect about their athletic careers, whether they won something or not is in the big picture, it's not important. But it's all the other things that you learn in sport and living that life and all the experiences you had in sport, whether they are positive or sometimes they are negative. Even those negative experiences can have a lot of meaning if we think about them and we stop to reflect. What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about my relationships? All these things. So doing these activities, they can have a lot more value than, just preventing getting sick.
Yes, yes.
And for us to be continuing to discuss that and explore that and, find different ways of practicing and doing physical education in a way that more people will find these activities meaningful. That's, I think it's a mission that is worth striving for.
I agree so much. And I could talk for hours on that topic, the one that you just brought up. And I think we shortchange the children if all we're doing is measuring, comparing, or running, moving just to get fit, so that
Yeah.
we can go back in the classroom or whatever the case may be. I think the learning is right there, right where we're at, right in the moment of the things that we're doing. But that's another conversation. And we've taken up too much of your time already. I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much, Noora. Noora.
It's fully my pleasure, Jim. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Beautiful. Okay. All right.